day number 3. Last night was, all day, was brutal. It was absolutely brutal. Just so card dead. And when we actually had like somewhat playable cards, we just weren't able to do much with them. We stayed in there with some bluffs and like kept from bleeding too many chips, but geez. Today, this morning, grabbed some coffee, out for a walk, tried to just clear my head, get my mind right. Time will tell you that this will pass, right? Like the variance will swing back the other way, and when it does, we're gonna be all right. We're gonna be on the right side of it here. So, out walking around now, getting a break in, getting the mind set, and then we're gonna hit the tables.
I'm never so packed for the stack, never lied on the rap, got a bag from the way that I write it. Queen Lincoln Tyson, through that I survived, doing 80 to the house, then I hit it to the sky, changed haters on a tirade, talking to their grip in the face, be still, let that hate stuff fade. We all want the same, we all want a meal in the safe, I wanna live like I'm trying to reach enlightenment. Trail spill from my lips.
We're about to play some 5-10, we got a seat, and we're sitting here in the Bellagio. Adam, this one's for you, man. You've been encouraging me to get out there and play the 5-10, even though I felt pretty nervous. We buy into this game for $1,000 worth of orange chips, and now we're heading to a 5-10 table that we're not super comfortable with yet. In the first hour, I mostly folded. I did raise ace-jack here, and as you can see in the window, I got an ace continued, and everybody chose to fold. That is all of the hands that I played in the first hour. All right, 1 hour in, taking a break, just taking a little walk around, get the blood moving, try to keep my mind sharp. We are even, and I'll take that. I haven't played much 5-10, so to not be down or to not have made like a giant blunder seems good. As I look around, when I started the game, there are a couple guys that I felt pretty good about playing against. Table less favorable now, but we'll roll with it. I'm not going to give up yet, so we'll play at least a couple hours, I think, and we'll go from there. I'll give you another update soon. Little bit of confidence here. We open ace-6 of clubs, and the button calls. Now, the button has about 6,000 in front of him. He has been a super, super aggressive opponent. He's been caught bluffing all in on the river multiple times already, and has definitely been putting in chips on most hands. He's aggressive. He puts you in hard spots. He's very difficult to play against. I do go ahead and continue here, as this flop will hit my range. I'll have more kings than he will, and my kings will be stronger. He does make the call. We go to a turn, which adds a club draw. I'm not going to slow down. If I had a king, I wouldn't slow down on this card. So I'm going to go ahead and continue for about half pot, betting $70. Now my opponent, I want you to watch. I'm not going to cut any of the time here, because this ends up being a big factor. But my opponent takes his time, looks at the board, asks how much my bet is really spending some time in the tank, and he's thinking about what he's going to do. He's definitely a smart player, definitely a thinking player, and ultimately decides that he's going to raise this one up to $190. Now my price is really good based on his raise here. Like, I can make the call. Let's say he has a king or a 9 and a club comes in. Good chance I'm going to get paid on top. It's going to be hard for him to get away. So I don't think I can fold for the price I'm given here. I'm basically being asked to pay $120 to win $525. It's a good price, and I think with my implied odds, I can definitely make this call. My ace may sometimes be good. It may go check, but I might actually get that through. And if I improve to the clubs, I think I can get paid by a king or a 9, which should be most of his holdings other than his bluffs. There is a chance that our ace high is good, by the way, but I don't think it's ever going to get to showdown with a check back. He's the kind of player who will put pressure. River is the ace of spades. Now, I check it over to him, and I have not cut this. Watch how much faster he decides to put his chips in. He announces an all-in. Now, this is a big deal. At the moment, so I've made top pair, and I know that if he has an ace, we're chopping, but I don't think he's going to have a ton of ace combinations that we're bluffing. I think he's more likely to have Broadway cards, some clubs, and if this was just in a vacuum, I'm going to fold, because I have a flush draw, and I'm blocking the clubs. What doesn't make sense to me is how quickly he put it in. The ace changes the scenario. If he's trying to get value from a king, then this ace matters. If he's trying to get value from an ace, he should at least have had to think about this for a second. He doesn't have to think. He just immediately jams. That makes me awfully suspicious. There aren't that many combinations of a 9 that should be in his range, and the other hand that makes sense is pocket 7s. This is not a king. This is almost certainly not an ace. So really, it's a bluff or he has value. Again, probably folding in a vacuum, but the speed at which he went makes me think that this is a timing tell and that he is bluffing and trying to push me off of this hand. For that reason, I sit in the tank for a very long time, and I won't extend this any further. I do throw in the call, and he shows us the Queen 10 offsuit, so he had the gutter ball, was super aggressive. Again, this is very opponent-specific, and the timing tell helped a lot. But that is why I made this call. It felt very uncomfortable to make, but very exciting to win a giant pot in a very tough spot as my first big hand at 5-10 here for the session. All right, so now I pick up pocket queens, and my friend who I just played the pot against, the guy to his right, these are both Asian players, so they're part of the Asian invasion. They're both crushing the table, both very aggressive, both definitely beating this game. He opens at 25, there's a call behind me, and now I make it $140 to go. He makes the call, and the player to my right in the cutoff does ultimately decide to fold. That means we are headed heads up to a flop. The flop comes down Jack 8-8 with 2 diamonds. So there's a flush draw out there. There's some jack combinations, but our queens are looking pretty good here. My opponent's range is going to contain some flush draws. It's going to contain some pairs, but most of those pairs are either going to be pocket jacks or 10s or 9s. I don't think we're going to face anything better than that. I don't think he's going to have an 8 very often, so we'll have some straight draws, some flush draws, not a ton of value, some ace-jack possibly. So I think we're going to be able to get called by a jack here, and I'm comfortable with where the pot's at to go ahead and take this one down. So I do go ahead and make a bet for $110. My opponent now thinks about it for a moment and then takes the opportunity to announce a raise. He raises this one up to $320. So it's a fairly substantial raise, but really he is representing pocket jacks or an 8. Again, these hands are unlikely. They are definitely possible, but they are unlikely. I don't think I can let the queens go. I definitely, my stack is not in a position to make a raise. I don't necessarily want to go all in on this flop. So I'm going to go ahead and make the call here so that we can see one more card before deciding on what we want to do. The dealer now brings the turn, which is the 6 of spades. This is a very good card for us. It doesn't improve anything that my opponent would be holding, and he's out of position, so he's going to have to act first. He does make a fairly large bet here into me. Basically, I now have a 1-to-1 stack-to-pot ratio, and I don't want to call here. If I'm calling, then my opponent still has some leverage and can put me in some pretty miserable spots on some scary river cards. I think I either need a fold or jam, and I don't think this is ever going to be a fold. I think this is too strong in my range, and again, my opponent is representing pocket jacks, which there are 3 combos of, or an 8, which there are just not that many combos of. I go ahead and jam it all in there. We're going to put him to the test, and if he has us, we will have to draw out. My opponent thinks about this one for a while, but doesn't take too long before deciding that he's going to fold. So we go ahead and get this one through, and we're scooping another nice big pot early on in the session. Take number 2, things going quite well. We've been put in some pretty tough spots, but things have definitely gone our way, which is really nice after how yesterday went. That said, we're sitting up, I think, 1,800 right now. Game's fun, people are great, and gonna stay in there, just stretching my legs. I probably won't stay too much longer. I'm ready for lunch. Want to make sure I don't start like getting tired. Had a snack, but I don't want to get so tired that all of a sudden I just am not functioning well. So I probably got another half an hour to an hour in me, and then I might just chill out for tonight. The Knights play tonight, game number 3, and I might just hang out and watch that game because I'm super stoked about it, and I'm in Vegas. We might as well enjoy it while we're here.
All right, this is a little bit later on, and I now have a tight opponent that opens up to 30. I'm in the big blind. I have 10-8 of clubs, and so I'm going to make the call. The flop comes down with a 10, queen 3-10, and I do check it over to him. My opponent is going to continue here, and he decides on a fairly large sizing. It's $80, so he's making a fairly large bet into the pot. Now, I don't think I can just get away right away. I do have some backdoor draws. I have second pair, but I do make this call. We go to the turn, and it's the king of clubs. So now I had a flush draw. I have third pair now, but I do still have my pair, which has some showdown value. Now, he is going to have quite a bit of connection with this board, and I may need clubs to come in if he continues here. He does continue fairly large for $240. even if I hit the flush, I may not be good. I do have a weak flush. So in this spot, I'm going to go ahead and let this one go. We're going to rack up these chips. Looks fantastic. This was a great session. And now we're headed off to dinner with Jerry. Jerry has this cool place that he recommends called Beauty in Essex. And you go into a pawn shop, and then to the back in the left, there's a door. You open that up, and there is a sweet speakeasy behind this place. Kind of an upscale restaurant, sort of a spendy place, but everything's expensive in Vegas. You might as well enjoy yourself. Great food. Go watch the Knights lose, and then we return to the Paris for some 2-5.
All right, we decided that we would play a little bit of 2-5 tonight at the Paris. Play some WSOP cash, so playing some 2-5, and kind of a funny thing happened. I'm sitting in the small blind. The button looks at his cards, and it looked like he was going to flick him into the middle, and then, like, open raises. And the way I interpreted that was like, hey, I have junk. Oh, wait a second on the button. I can steal these blinds. And then decided to open. So I have the Doyle. I have 10 deuce of hearts. And I'm like, I'm just going to 3-bet him here because I think he's folding. And so I made it 40. He calls. We go to a flop, all hearts. So flop the joint. Continue. He ends up raising it to, I made it 35. He made it 75. Bumped it up to 225 and took it down. But kind of funny. Afterwards, when I talked to him, I just told him, I said, hey, it seemed like you were about to muck. That's the reason I raised this up. So I ended up showing it to him. And he's like, no, I was just moving it because I wanted to make sure you couldn't see it in the camera. So kind of a funny thing. Almost stepped in a little bit of a bear trap there.
The most interesting hand of the night session here is Ace-Jack with the Ace of Spades. There is a limp, and then I go ahead and bump it up to $40. The big blind and the button both call. We go to deuce, 10-5, and I'm going to check. I'm definitely staying in this one. I'm going to float if there's a bet, but I don't want to bet and then get pushed off. This flop doesn't connect super hard with anybody, but if somebody has a piece, they're going to be calling, and I don't want to bloat the pot here and then have to give up on the turn since I have 2 opponents. So I do make the call here to float, and the turn comes in, the 2 of spades. So now I am blocking the nut flush. It checks over to the button, and the button bets $80. This is a fairly small bet given the pot size, and my opponent doesn't have much behind, about $400. So I'm going to pause for a second here. I'm expecting my opponent, since I'm holding the Ace of Spades, to have more 10s given the action and given my blockers than I do flushes here. So I think about this one for a little bit, and I decide that I want to get a read on his body language. So what I do is I pick up a chip here, and it's a $1 chip, and I'm thinking about going all in, so I kind of make a motion, like maybe I will, and I'm moving the chip around just to watch his body language and see what he does. He does not look super comfortable. I think I know where I'm at. It looks like he has a 10 in my opinion, or something that is not solid, maybe the king of spades, something he's not extremely confident with. So for that reason, I decide if I put him all in here, he's going to have a hard time calling, and if he does call, I can almost certainly improve to the nuts. I go ahead and move all in, and he does not take very long before deciding that he's going to make the call. That's not a good sign for us. So maybe I stepped in it. The river is the deuce of diamonds. We don't improve, and he shows Jack 10 offsuit for the 10. I'm surprised he made the call, and I asked him later, how did you decide to make the call? He said, I was watching you while you were moving your chips around, so while I'm trying to get a read on him, and he said, it looked to me like you were weak. You were playing with a $1 chip, which, if you know me, I go all in with a low-denomination chip, a single chip all the time. But to him, that was unique or something he wasn't used to. So he felt like that was weakness. He felt like the fact that I paused for a second was weakness. And ultimately, my attempt to read him helped him to read me, and he ends up making the call. Kind of a funny spot, and I end up giving this one away, which is unfortunate.